Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again this week, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on?
What is going on? This is going to be like a throwback to our old episodes where we just kind of talked about a bunch of things instead of just like a spoiler cast that we've done for the last couple months.
I was gonna say it's been like what, like 3 months?
I guess we had
Oh,
like
yeah.
one episode in there that was like, oh, let's talk about Breath of the Wild and Jedi Survivor, I think. But even that was like
Tears of the Kingdom, but yeah.
oh yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about our first impressions of Final Fantasy XVI. We've both been putting a ton of time into that since it came out this week. We also have both finished Diablo IV, so we're going to give our thoughts on that. Not necessarily like spoiler casty thoughts on that, because I admittedly was just not at all paying attention to the story stuff for a lot of it. I'm sure I'd like got the key beats and stuff, but you could throw five names at me and I would not know if they were character names or anything. And then lastly, I went and saw Elemental, the new Pixar movie. So I'll share a little bit of thoughts on that to wrap up this episode. So timestamps in the description, as is often the case. Before we dive into that, though, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So Cam, kicking things off, Final Fantasy First Impressions. You and I both played the demo, both really, really enjoyed the demo, and then just kind of like went from there and have been playing it a lot for the last couple days. We'll keep this spoiler free largely. Also in particular because I don't know anymore where you and I are in comparison with one another.
Totally fair. We're actually even playing it in different rooms this time, so like
yeah. It is I was like, I need to be playing this one on my big screen TV instead of just on my little monitor here. So yeah, I'm playing it in my room, and it is overheating my PlayStation, but we're making it through. So what are you thinking so far of Final Fantasy 16?
I love it. It's this is great. It's a great game. They have done something to one thing I'm like I was talking to you earlier. I was like and I was just gushing about the current conflict like of the world that I'm in, not even like what my characters are going through. This world feels so alive and lived in and has like culture and like a unique identity that I don't think the series has seen probably since like maybe Tactics. Like there's a level of distinction between peoples and cultures and
the world is happening around you
yes.
too. Like events are happening completely separate, but obviously tied into your story. But like, yeah, there are like nations at war that are fighting their war while you're going off and doing your own things, and you experience and hear what happened, through the game and through kind of how the story is told. So yeah, it is a very like living, breathing world over the course of the game.
I think it does something that a lot of RPGs are afraid to do, which is it divorces the overarching conflicts of the world and the nations around them from the personal conflicts of each character. A lot of times in RPGs, they tie characters' personal conflicts in with the kind of like overarching story of what's going on in the world. Either because like you're a royal person or you're a general or like there's a ton of examples in other RPGs where you're a central focus of like the world's eye is on you. And I think that's a big part of most games that it wants to give you the sense of like you are the hero of the story. And Final Fantasy 16 does such a great way of subverting that in you are the hero of your story, but your story is not the only one being told. And even then, sometimes you're the villain of your story, and it's rather of other people's stories. And it does a great job of not letting anybody paint themselves in black and white. And it's a world of, I don't even want to say it's a world of gray. I want to say it's just a world of variety of colors. And nobody's trying to be the gray, grim, dark character of there's no good guy, no bad guy. It's people have personal aspirations and they're willing to make sacrifices based off of those. There are those who have larger aspirations that are greater than themselves and are dedicated to that cause. And it is people finding themselves within rocks and a hard, or in between rocks and hard places constantly. And I'm loving that. And that's just the story, the lore in the world, which is just top notch. I'm so appreciative of it. But also on top of that is the combat. The combat's incredible. Game engine is awesome. I'm freaking loving the action based combat that is tied into like RPG elements that are much more heavily focused in the action on the side of action RPG, but it is still like there's still really great role like RPG mechanics in there in regards to your upgrading, your kind of layout of your abilities. You and I talked about how after you've like mastered an ability, you can basically have it on any icon loadout, and I love that. I love the idea. It's like we're not locking you into this. We are allowing you to kind of like you've mastered it, so you can kind of put it anywhere. And it's also on top of that, just like the upgrades of themselves being spectacular. All the abilities are really awesome and like unique in their own way. There's no real redundant abilities. No one ability can significantly say, oh, this is better or different than this one. It's personal preference and like what kind of abilities you're wanting to throw together.
Yeah, the for context for anybody playing the game, both Cameron and I have unlocked the third icon is effectively where we're at, and that's kind of as spoilery as we'll go. Obviously, you know there are 3+ icons if you played the combat element of the demo. So yeah, we that's kind of story wise where we are, and yeah, I love the one thing I've been getting more and more adept at in the combat, because I'm not typically the action combat guy we were talking about right before we started recording. Like I've played the first Bayonetta game, didn't really click with me. I've never really gotten into a Devil May Cry, like those kinds of action, like chasing a high score kind of action character combat things just aren't really my cup of tea. But one thing I've really found myself enjoying and experimenting and playing with right now is the stagger system of the combat.
Yes.
And I've found myself, okay, these are the moves that I'm going to start the fight with to like knock down somebody's stagger meter real quick and kind of get them into a vulnerable position. And then once they're staggered, now these are the moves I'm going to really pound them with power wise. And here's like the combo moves and like kind of working a lot of that out and figuring out how to like optimize some of those elements. And there's a lot of like fun in exploring that. And I love one of the things I haven't played around with a ton, I don't know if you have, is that there's like a zero cost to respecking.
Oh yeah, it's great.
If you want to pull all your ability points and just completely respec, you can do that, with a push of a button kind of thing. Or if you want to just like pull points off of specific abilities so you can try other things out, you can do that too. It's really cool. And yeah, I'm having fun figuring out, like, the trickiest thing for me sometimes will be just in the flow of combat or in the heat of combat. I won't realize which icon I'm on, and I'll go and push a button thinking I'm on one icon, and oh nope, it's in particular one of them is the icon you start with. Like you get a dash kind of is one of your buttons. That same button on another icon can kind of like bring things to a screeching halt for its mechanic, and so like it can really like disrupt the flow if I'm not in the right spot.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I also ran into that because I have one of the first icon's abilities is on that one. Mm-hmm. And so I used that one and then immediately thought that I was still on the first icons for the dash and immediately like ground me to a halt. I was like, what did I do? Yeah. What did I do? And it was like, oh shoot, that's right, I'm on this one.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's great. One of my favorite things is when I realized that the 4-hit chain combo, if you hold down square after the 4th hit for like 2 seconds, it will charge up your thing for a heavy attack.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've learned at first I was like, yeah, like the whole like magic system this time around is not greatly emphasized because you really are only dealing with 1 to 2 tiers. And it is a matter of like, yeah, you do that. It takes a bit to charge. I didn't realize how good that is for interrupting attacks on guys coming up against you or allies, or just like
I mean, for me, it's
Yeah.
like with the fire ability, for example, again, the first ability you get in the game, or with the first icon, um, it was realizing that if I shoot a charged fire at somebody, at like a weak enemy, it'll pop them up in the air,
Yeah.
and then I can like dash up to them and like attack them mid-air, go all Dragon Ball Z on them, and I always love, it's like my way of bringing Spider-Man into this game, because I pop up, fight them in the air, and then end those combos with like the downward slash that just like brings them back to into the
Yep.
ground, and then like do another ground combo on them, and so yeah, like taking out like the grunts with those kinds of combos is a lot of fun, and tends to be really effective to clear the battlefield for the big enemies that have like the stagger bars that you're going to have to pour a little bit of time into.
Definitely. Also using it when you like, I was in a fight and I was focusing on one guy, the heavy guy, and I was like, and then all of a sudden I was like, why am I not making any progress? And I realized, oh, there's some dude casting Cure,
Yeah.
and so I immediately like went over, focused on him, shot him up into the air, zoomed over to him, just wasted him. Have you upgraded your downward slash though?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I've upgraded all
Okay.
of the like abilities.
The Shield of Rosaria abilities is what I typically
Yeah.
call them, because those are just like your base abilities.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, those are all fully upgraded.
great, because I think that's actually, if you want some tips, that's my number one tip, is get those fully upgraded, because those are your bread and butters.
Yeah.
You'll
I've
rely
only-
on those so much.
I've ability point wise, I've only unlocked one of the like ultimate abilities of one of the icons. But
I've not unlocked any of them.
Once
So.
I did, I routinely use it, and it's just like the worst part of it is it has a significantly longer cooldown period than a lot of the other moves. So it's like I'll use it, and then I'm like, okay, I really want to use it again, but I'm gonna have to wait a little while, so gonna have to juggle just the other abilities in the meantime, because yeah, those are real beefy. But yeah, having a ton of fun with the combat there. One of the things I just checked out before we started recording was the like arena mode kind of thing that you unlock pretty early in the game, and it's basically a mode that lets you kind of replay a section of the game full on platinum games, chasing a high score style kind of thing. And as I was telling you, the section basically breaks out. Like I did the Great Woods section, which is one of the first kind of areas you play through in the game, and it basically breaks out each leg of that chapter. Like, you know, the first battle you kind of are going to have is like one leg of the battle, and that gets a score and gets a ranking, and then you kind of, your score resets, and you do the second leg and the third leg and fourth leg. And I think that first one has like 8 legs, like I was getting scores in the hundreds of thousands of points kind of for each one. And like I had an A rank, and then everything else was S rank. Ultimately, I got like a full S rank going back for it. But there aren't rewards for doing this. It is just like personal gratification. And since that's not really a thing for me, it was kind of like okay, this was a thing I tried. I don't ever need to come back to this. But I do also like that there is another option that I haven't really gone back and played with, but it lets you go back and replay, and like if you miss chests, you can go and like find the chests and do that kind of stuff. And you get like, in that mode, you also like get experience. So if you just want to like grind, which I have not needed to do, I just hit level 30 in my game.
I'm at level 29 right now.
Yeah.
So
like I've not felt the need to grind. The hardest things I've encountered right now are like a couple of the hunts I've been doing are a couple levels above me, so they're a little bit beefier, but I'm still able to make those, like get through those pretty easily, and haven't felt like I've needed to grind at all to like feel like I'm keeping up with the pace of the game.
I will also say, if we're talking modes, one of the best things that I saw that they have and I've used is the practice mode. The practice mode is full on, like inspired by fighting games, because those options you have there are awesome. Just to be like, I just really want to just practice my chains and my combos.
Yeah.
So you go and you basically say, I want my enemy to basically be like never have their health hit. So they're just constantly being waylaid. Like you just use them as a punching bag, and using that for like also learning how like, hey, this one bigger enemy, I had a harder time with. I want to have practice on that guy. And so getting that opportunity to kind of like learn the attack patterns of some of the larger enemies with some weirder attack patterns. There was one guy that like he was just trouncing me, and I was like, I hate this guy so much. And I went back and like replayed it in training mode, and I was just like, okay, cool. I completely understand what I did wrong, how to go back in there and do that. It's perfect for anybody who's ever loved those like in-depth fighting game training mechanics. The training mode in this game is just like top tier.
Yeah. In a similar vein to that, I'll say you've not been playing with any of the like timely accessories.
Timely assistance, I use that
Okay.
for Torgal.
Oh, that does the auto of Torgal's attacks.
Yeah.
I've been using the timely evasion one that basically auto evades. Those are not, you can't use those in the arena mode, so I did like unequip it in order to go and do the arena mode. And swapped in something else.
There's a lot of great like trinkets and abilities if you like for that. If you want to get away from the timely accessories, I think that there's a lot of really good ones. So.
Oh yeah. There are like accessories that like will increase a specific move. So like if you find the one that like matches the moves that you're using regularly, you can throw those on. Either get like better strength. Like the one that I threw on reduce the cooldown time on the super special that takes forever for me. So I was like, well, if I can't use the timely accessory, I'll swap that in instead. But I do like, I like and don't like those timely accessory things. I like that they're there for like accessibility things. I don't like that they take an accessory slot in your already limited 3 accessory slots. I feel like I'm not in part because I'm also playing, and I think you are probably still too, with the like experience and like boost accessories that came as like part of the pre-order stuff.
I have dropped the experience boost, and I've picked up the ability point boost. There's a trinket that lets you pick up ability points. It's like a 25% increase in ability points.
That's probably a better one to go with.
Yep.
I don't think I found that one.
I could care less about my level, to be honest. I really just am. I told you earlier, I was like, I just really like grinding out those points. I love fighting all these battles. Like, I'll get to a point where it's like, okay, you just got to walk a little bit to the village. It's like, yeah, but down here, there's a lane of like a bunch of monsters, and I'm going to go murder them all before I do this. And it's like, cool. You weren't supposed to come down here. It's like, I don't care. Yeah. Like, oh, go talk to this one person in this town. Cool. You know, it's down. I just hit this, but what if I hit this lever before I go talk to them and I go down and I end up having to fight a bunch of monsters though? What if I did that?
Yeah, that's an option.
And I do that all the time. Yeah. It's literally I love this game so much.
I will say in that spirit, in the open world areas, I like the map helps and I can be like, okay, that's clearly where I'm supposed to go, but hey, there's an open area over here that probably has enemies and stuff like that. In some of the more like linear dungeons that don't have a map that you can pull up, I find myself constantly running into that feeling of like, all right, I'm going down this path. Have I gone down this path because there's like a chest at the end, or did I like, because that's the one I want to do. I want to do that first, and then I want to do the mainline path. But like, it's really hard to gauge sometimes, and some of them it is just like, it's just cruel because it's like, oh, both these paths will like lead to the same place, and it's just going to be like a different makeup of enemies. And so like I'll go and I'll be like, okay, but before I progress further, let me backtrack, go the other way, and I'll do that, and then I get back to like right where I was. I'm like, well, son of a, all right.
I don't care. I love those actually, because then I'll just like work my way backwards back to the starting point.
I enjoy. It's the like not knowing issue of like, am I like, I've gone down this a ways. It feels like I've probably gone too far for there to just be like a chest at the end or something. So just so I make sure this isn't like, you know, going back or something, I'll you know, backtrack or something, and then it turns out no, that was where the chest was. I probably just didn't go far enough or something like that. Like I run into that. I remember like there was a design meme going around that was basically like, you know, the player, here's the path you want them to go, but here's the path that you want them to go for the chest, and here's where they go. They go just shy of the chest, think it's the main path, and they go back the other way, and then they trigger the cutscene, and now they're pissed because they didn't get that chest.
Yep, accurate, 100% accurate. Yes, that is a massive issue. I agree with you on that. I was thinking more of like those places where it's like a figure eight basically.
Mhm.
And so it's like, oh yeah, but you can walk backwards to it before you carry on through that other path. But no, I'm understanding now what you're saying. Yes, 100% those piss me off.
Yeah, it's not a piss me off thing. And again, there is a feature of like, hey, if you want to go back and play those areas, you can play those areas and explore what you might have missed and stuff like that.
Which is awesome. Like it's really smart for them to do something like that when they know that, hey, we are going to be a lot more linear this time around. So we want people to have the opportunity to go back and replay things. Also, the ability of going back and replaying things with like all your abilities unlocked already.
Yeah, I mean that's why I was racking up S ranks on this thing, because I'm doing like the beginning of the game stuff with ultimate abilities on on an icon and then two other icons to switch combat up. So
yeah. I could definitely see that being the case. I'm really excited to actually go do those, especially once you told me that they're ranked.
Yeah.
I'm a big old sucker for the ranked systems.
Yeah, they're ranked, and you get like little like here are the achievements you hit at the end where it's like, oh, you did you went through this entire fight and didn't take any damage. So here's like a little medal for that.
Yes.
That's like it doesn't mean anything. I don't think it adds to the score.
Doesn't need to.
But it's like going through those at the end being like, oh, okay, cool. Or like, oh, you fully exploited this enemy's weakness. Excellent. Great. So yeah, it is a like a slight endorphin rush of like, look at how big my number was and look at all of those medals on the screen. Doesn't translate to anything in game though, so bye.
It's an alternative mode. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm totally okay with it. I can't wait to go back and do that. Also, you get experience from it, right?
No, not that one.
Oh, not that one? Okay, the other one you do experience from.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, this mode is just chase your high score.
That sounds so good though.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be really cool for like a games done quick thing, or like a
sure.
Like any sort of like GQ, any sort of like
I mean, our own Let's Plays, you and I could just do one and be like, all right, let's see who can get the highest score kind of thing. Like you play yours, I'll play mine. You'll kick my ass because you actually care about that stuff.
If I don't, it'll be like such a humiliating thing.
Yeah,
it'll be so humiliating if I fall short.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I've most recently been playing. But yeah, I'm much like you. I'm loving the story. Loving great performances, great writing, which has not always been Final Fantasy's strong suit. Same with performances and writing, not always their best foots forward, but they're knocking it out of the park here. Lots of fun, and then yeah, like obviously the thing that has been thrown around about this game a lot is Game of Thrones, and it definitely. Like it fits. There's a reason people are associating the two. It very much has that kind of like mature tone, and who's safe, who's not is very much up in the air for a lot of these things. And yeah, I'm very much enjoying the story because it feels thus far like the Final Fantasy that has grown. That like I've grown up with Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy is finally like growing up. In the way that what was it like? I mean, like God of War did a great job with God of War 2018 of like feeling like it was a game that is finally maturing past its like initial what it was trying to be, and that like that's how I feel this one is like this feels like a game that has like grown for its audience that has also grown, and so it's telling like a more adult, more mature story for the fans that have been playing this series for 30 years, so that they can enjoy the more adult, more mature stories, but with a Final Fantasy flavor to it. So yeah, having a great time with it. Any other beats you want to chat about, or other topics or anything on this?
Yeah, I do want to give a massive shout out to specifically Ben Starr. Ben Starr does an amazing job capturing the different phases of Clive's life.
Yeah.
Also, he's done an amazing job going around doing the PR tour.
Yep.
He's been great doing that. Shout out to him hanging out with our buddy Snowbike Mike. And kind of funny.
Yeah.
But he is. I've been just incredibly impressed from whether it's his teenage year self or his like further on in the years stuff. Like he's done such an amazing job of I'll be honest. I love Teen Clive. Teen Clive is one of my favorite aspects of this game. So
where like so it's I don't think it's a spoiler because they've advertised this a lot. Clive, you basically meet Clive at 3 different points in his life, and that's like where you're
It's in all
playing
the
Clive.
promo stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
literally in every trailer. It shows him in the report
they're
points.
like it's young, it's young Clive, which I think is like 13,
15.
15. So then there's like 20s, like 28-year-old Clive, and then like 32, 33-year-old Clive, I think is basically like
34.
where we get him.
Yeah.
So you're saying like early beginning.
Yeah, I love that, Clive. I love that. The story does so much groundwork at the beginning of like something that one of my biggest complaints about Final Fantasy 15 was the opening chapter. They start you off kind of like in median res of your journey and then have you like backtrack and then all this stuff, and like you miss out on all this stuff like from like they debuted originally in the trailer, which is you escaping the city and all that stuff that I was like that we were all pretty stoked for because it looked awesome. Then that getting translated into a weird movie. Shout out to Kingslave, I guess.
Which doesn't even focus on Prompto, or is it Prompto?
Noctis.
Noctis. Yeah, it doesn't even focus on him and that crew.
Nope,
like,
not at all.
Completely different character.
Yep. Completely like it. There's a lot to be said. Yeah. One, like I've struggled for years trying to put together like my piece.
Yeah, we've talked about it at length.
At length, yeah.
The tale of my written piece was about it being like a tale of two games. Or now it's all blurred together. I wrote a significantly like scathing.
You wrote us very
about it, talking about it as two games. I think maybe that was going to be like a jumping off point for an article for you.
Oh, I was already. This was before we even worked together on stuff. So you were doing it for Trevor Trove, and I was doing it for KGN.
Yeah.
At that time, Naughty Gamers at that time. But I was struggling because I was like, how do I reconcile these two games? Because I like anyway. We've talked enough about it in length. I won't, and this is not what it's about. So, yeah. But no, I love Clive as a character. I've like immediately fell deeply in love with. He's such a great, in-depth character that has a lot of aspects to him that are believable. Like there is a very different game this game could have been if Clive was not the kind of if Clive was a typical RPG protagonist character.
Yeah.
And we're getting shades of that where you and I both are at in the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a lot going on here that's like, oh, this really could have been a different game.
Yeah.
That could have followed a more traditional route, and instead they embraced a very different path for this character than you typically associate with most just overall role-playing games in general. And seeing that play out the way that it has been one, awesome. And two, like you get to see a lot of what Clive was robbed of.
Mm-hmm.
More than just at the beginning of the game, but like there's a kinder, nicer path that Clive was robbed of because of a single person's cruelty, and what they do with that and how this is currently where we're at right now, how it's evolving is so great.
Yeah, at the same point, there's like, I think there's something to be said that like the world he exists in is cruel. So even if he had like the gentler path, would he have survived it?
That's actually a good question. Would he have survived? Maybe not.
Yeah. So yeah, I think
that's a good point.
There's a lot of like interesting layers at play there. In that vein, I think also I don't have like a cast list in front of me or anything, but like this has a great supporting cast of characters as well. A ton of like, again, great performances. In particular, Sid's great. Jill, I really enjoy when like Jill and Clive are kind of having their scene work together, and a lot of the antagonist characters are interesting, and there are dimensionality and there are layers to them that make it a very fascinating thing. And one of the things I think that both of us are really enjoying is jumping into the active time lore thing in the middle in the middle of a cutscene to be like, okay, who are the people, who are the major players in the scene, or who where is this scene taking place? Let me look at the history of that place a little bit, and that goes back to the kind of the lore and the world building that, and the like the world being alive element is like, oh, I have a better understanding of how this country's kind of like hierarchy and power structure is built because I can hop in and check out that lore, versus like this this, you know, this country that is, you know, very like religious orthodox kind of thing. And so yeah, getting to see kind of how those entities kind of like sprung up in their own like belief systems.
Yes.
And then also how obviously some of those belief systems have been like spread across the world,
In different
in the form
unique
of
ways.
like bearers being the like, oh, like the game's, you know, obviously like slave allegory kind of thing.
I think at this point it's not an allegory.
Oh yeah,
It is just
obviously
it is
they are just straight up slaves. Yes.
yeah.
But it is like a interesting to see how that was like. I read some lore thing that was basically like, oh, that like the treatment of bears was like defined across the nations as like at the time of this like great concord, that like like in that same concord it established like a uniform currency across the realm, and
Yeah.
so it's basically like, okay, here's how we can all trade with each other, and also here's how we're going to treat our slaves, and it's like, you know, despite the wars and the conflicts that have occurred, like everybody still abides by those things, and it's like, that's terrible.
Yep. Oh yeah, no, it completely reminds me of the Slave Catcher Act of
Yeah.
in the United States of like, hey, we need to make this economic policy work. What's something we can exchange? Like, something we can all agree on? Okay, cool. Yeah, we will no longer stop you from sending slave catchers to kidnap black people, even some free black people, from the North anymore. Like it's like, oh, okay, like, and I thought it was interesting. It's like, well, why wouldn't Elwin, who's Clive's father, like if he hates the way that people treat bears, why wouldn't he stop it? It's like, oh, because it's like an international thing. He was born, like he was technically born into being required to keep it.
Yeah.
And like you can say like, well, that's still BS. That there's ramifications to that, and I'm like, I like that they made it complicated. It's not just like, oh, it's a singular person who's responsible, like who can make this change. It's like, we're not just talking about culture and history.
Yeah, it is a systemic problem.
It is it's so good that they build off nuance where it's like, slavery is bad. Yeah. But here's why slavery is bad, is because there are systems in place that were put in place long before individuals who want to make those changes, and what are the ramifications of those changes. And I like that they pull in the complication with that. Like, but also it adds like I said, it adds color to this world. This is not a world of grays. It is a world of a variety of colors between white and black. And it is the way that they approach that in things like that, where you have just like people's attitudes and aspects around them, and like just how they treat bears. For people who don't know, bears are people who can use magic without using crystals. And you think in a lot of RPGs, the magic using class would be like the upper crust, like, you know, empowered class. And it's like, no, very really, they are seen as a resource. And I'm like, that is probably
a resource and a threat. So they basically got like
Mhm.
all of their rights stripped away from them, because it very much is the like, if they realize how strong they are together and how they can like take over everybody else, that's bad for the non-magic users. So the non-magic users exploited their power structures and basically made bearers people like second, third class citizens.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing about it. I'm like, that is so much more realistic than a handful of people who have all this power and they've somehow constructed governments and everything to support themselves with it. It's like, that's far less likely than the opposite of these magical people being exploited. And it's like, I love it. They're hitting nails on the head. They're doing such a great job of like exploring these like darker and more colorful sides of humanity. This also, I'll put it out there, I would love to play like a multiplayer version of this game in this world, or just like a tabletop version of this world.
I mean, it's Final Fantasy 16 or 14.
14.
Obviously, like different themes and different ideas, but like there is so much.
DNA wise,
obviously, obviously, so much of the Final Fantasy 14 team is in this, and it is like doing so many of the side quests is like, oh, this is just like one of the simple side quests ripped out of early Final Fantasy XIV gameplay kind of stuff. Like, oh, I'm going to help out this lumberjack, go get some wood for them from across the way to bring it back to him, kind of thing. Or I'm going to go fight a few enemies, get their stuff, and then bring it back. It's
There's a little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I will say, Koji Fox once again, Thal's balls himself. The guy who came up. So Koji Fox is the English translator who came up with the idea of Thal's balls. As like Thal being a god in Final Fantasy XIV, and they wanted a curse word, and he's like, it should be Thal's balls. There's literally a mission called Cock and Ball.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I saw that, and I was like, Koji Fox, you motherfucker.
Yes, Cock, Caulk, and Ball, Bawl. Yeah. I saw that as well, and was like, all right.
You motherfucker, Koji. You motherfucker.
Yeah.
Shout out to him.
Yeah, a ton of fun. I look forward to having the next few days off work so I can just kind of keep playing it, and I'm going to get so much further than you over the next few days.
I'm so upset that I have to go back to work tomorrow. And here's the thing, I thought about calling in sick, but it's like I have way too much work to do.
Yeah.
To like call in, it's the end, like it's literally the last like 4 days of the quarter. And so like I have to be there to work.
Yeah. For me, this is very much like Sunday and Monday are my normal days off. And from my work retreat that I went on, a month or so back, basically they were like, all right, and everybody gets 2 comp days. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and use my comp days after Final Fantasy XVI comes out. So I can just enjoy the crap out of this game unperturbed for a little while there. Yes, we will of course revisit once we've finished the game and kind of give our final thoughts on it. I'm very much enjoying it and looking forward to, or continuing to look forward to seeing where the game goes from here and stuff like that. Because ton of fun, and it like even where we're at, like level 30, obviously, theoretically about a third of the way through the game. You never really, like, unless you do grind out and stuff, you never get to like level 99 in a Final Fantasy unless you're grinding out. So probably not really a third, but having fun with it. Looking forward to seeing where it continues to go from here. Also, I'm having fun with the hunts now that I've unlocked those. Those are fun because they're akin to the 12 system, where it was like, they're not going to put like a point on the map for you. It'll tell you in the description, here's the ballpark area. And sometimes it'll even give you a little bit more like detail in the like description of like, here's where people saw this thing running around. But it is up to you to go and like find the hunt.
Yes.
Find the mark. So there's some fun to be had there. I'm enjoying the side quests. I've done pretty much every side quest up to this point. At some point you start like unlocking renown points kind of thing. And you get like little rewards as you like level up your renown. So that's cool as well. And just a fun game all around. What a good time to be a Final Fantasy fan these last few years.
It is.
I tweeted out, so like my game of the year 2020 was Final Fantasy VII Remake. My game of the year 2021 was Endwalker from Final Fantasy XIV, and the fact that I played all of the rest of Final Fantasy XIV that year too. Last year I didn't consider it for game of the year because it was a remake, but Crisis Core was a ton of fun to like revisit and hop into last year. This is so far an easy game of the year contender. This year we get Final Fantasy VII Rebirth next year. We are after some doldrums there for me. In the like 12, 13, 15 era where there were more misses than hits for me, I'm glad to be back on top and loving Final Fantasy again. So yay for that. Stay tuned for more of our impressions as we progress and get further through the game. Who knows? I'll probably have it beaten by next week's episode. We'll see. But yes, lots of fun to be had there. So Cam, let's switch over to Diablo IV.
Oh, shout out to Ralph Ineson because he's in both.
He's in both games. Yep.
He's Sid in Final Fantasy 16 and Lorath in Diablo 4.
Yep.
Congrats to him. In his interview, they've asked him, so what do you think about that? He goes, I did these voices like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
I had no
it's
idea that they'd be coming out at the same time.
yeah, it's just a coincidence that he's just having a crazy June.
Yep, good for him.
Yes, Diablo 4. You've been playing as a necromancer. I played through as a sorcerer.
Yes.
What'd you think of Diablo here, Cam?
Well, it was a couple of spell boys. We had a good time going through it. You
We didn't actually play together at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because you were way ahead of me the entire time.
Yeah.
I want to say I had a really great time with it. I of course we had very different experiences because I'm a gigantic nerd and I love the lore of Diablo. Unsurprisingly, yes, I was obsessed with the lore around Diablo. Diablo 4 has a lot of good, awesome lore points. My biggest disappointment out of it is there's not enough player interaction with that lore. Like the world. We talked about how in Final Fantasy XVI the game has a world that's going on around you, but you are still committing to your story.
Mm-hmm.
Diablo 4 has the problem where there's a story going on around you, and you're just kind of like in it.
Yeah.
And moving around in it.
I described it very much as somebody who, I've played every Diablo. Couldn't tell you a thing that happens in any of them apart from you fight a lot of demons and hell's usually involved. But yeah, this very much felt like, well, the real thing people seem to like from Diablo is like the loot chase. So that's where we're going to put like all of our real resources, and the story and the your character's place in the story can be a little secondary. And yeah, like I feel like there was nothing my character was just like a blank avatar who just showed up to kill things and didn't really have any opinion on the narrative or anything like that. It very much, and admittedly, part of this may be because there was a good chunk of things where I'm just kind of like skipping through dialogue just to get back to the gameplay.
You're not entirely wrong though, Trevor. Like as somebody who didn't skip anything, I can tell you, you're not that off.
I specifically did that way more on like side quests. Like I barely pay attention to what the story of a side quest is, because they do all boil down to, hey, can you go help my family member? You get to their family member and they're dead, and you're going to fight the demon that their family member has now become, and there's just tragedy, there's just sadness and death everywhere in all these side quests. There's no happy endings in Sanctuary. But I did like the Act 1 through 6 structure of things. I did like pay attention to and kind of like follow what was going on there. But like I was, usually an act or two ahead of you, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm doing this thing," and I'm like, I had to have done that. Clearly, I don't remember what you're talking about. I don't remember who you're talking about.
I brought up Yorin. I was like, "Yeah, Yorin. This all happened to Yorin, and it's crazy." And you're like,
"I don't remember names." I like Lorath, and was Yorin the other guy with you? Like
no, Yorin is the son of the guy that you're thinking of.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, like by the end, I was like, I know Lorath and I know Neril, and I thought I knew that third person's name, but clearly that third person did not stick in my brain. So, oh well.
What if I just sure there's like a fourth and fifth person sometimes?
I'm talking like by the end of the game, you had like a little cohort of a few people.
Yeah, no, I was making a joke because it's like there's no way you remember some of these other.
Oh God, no. So yeah, like, but and then, like, I will remember a couple character beats probably and stuff like that, but it very much is like the story is the it's a means to an end, and the end is, okay, go and like kill a whole bunch of things and constantly just upgrade, a little bit of gear each time and upgrade your skills and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm level 60 is where I stopped to jump into Final Fantasy 16. I don't really feel a need to go back. Like I mean, especially with how long it took to get from level 50 to level 60, I'm never going to hit level 100. Because I'm just not going to, the loop isn't that satisfying to just spend the next few weeks trying to do that. So it was a fine enough thing to pass the time between Tears of the Kingdom and Final Fantasy 16, but also a completely like forgettable experience for me probably at the end of the day.
The thing about me is I love Diablo so much as far as like, so my history with Diablo is a little bit of like, it was the one game my brother borrowed from his friend that I wasn't allowed to play. It's like the one Blizzard game I wasn't allowed to play until I was older, and I finally got my hands on and playing through them. And I had a blast with them. I thought Diablo 1 and 2 are fantastic, but it wasn't until the announcement trailers for Diablo 3 were coming out, and I was like fascinated. I was like, what's going on? Because at that point I had been super deep into World of Warcraft, and all the Warcraft games, and like to say Blizzard is like probably a cornerstone of like my love of lore. Like, because I remember literally reading the manuals that came with like massive amounts of lore info in the early Blizzard games, and I was just like, I would devour those growing up, and so, getting into Diablo 3, I had paused on all Blizzard games for a while. Or no, I didn't get into Diablo 3 initially because of the launch fiasco around it. I was like, I'm not gonna bother with any game that's always online. Because those are just littered with issues at the time. This is like 2010, 2011.
Yeah, the auction house.
Yeah, the auction house was another thing. It's like I was less bothered by that out of like the concept of how it was applied. Just the overall idea was dumb to me. The idea like you would sell anything digitally like that as a player was like, I was used to the auction house with like digital currency in World of Warcraft, but the idea of using real money felt way too weird for me. And felt like way too many. It was way too weird, especially considering how hard Blizzard's worked for years to crack down on that aspect of things in World of Warcraft from third party sites and stuff.
Mm-hmm. When in reality, they were like, well, how do we actually make the money off of that instead of the third party people? That's what they were trying to do. And that's what they continue to try and do now with all that, like with the currency and the battle pass and all those other things that they're adding into the game. That's another thing. Like hearing more and more about like the battle pass of like, yeah, you're going to have to build a completely new character to do the battle pass stuff. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not like, why did I waste the last few weeks getting a character up to level 60 if I can't even use them in the battle pass? What is the point of it's just bad. It's bad live service stuff. Like
it is. There's the Diablo team, the way that it was like the original team is obviously not there anymore. But the idea of the team and the core concept around that entire unit was taking like 10 years to put out a sequel, but it's a whole complete sequel. And they ended up finding a niche with the seasonal system for Diablo 3, where there was a very niche group of people that really got into the kind of like high score of where you ended up on like leaderboards for this, like for that season. And they were obsessed with that. And seeing them kind of like try to twist it into a battle pass has just been pretty upsetting, because it's like the people who were looking forward to the new seasonal type of, not content, but the new seasonal rounds of leaderboards, along with the other things around it, are going to be disappointed. Nobody's happy. I don't know anybody who's really like stoked for this stuff if you can't use your previously character to do the season, like your battle pass. Like,
yeah, it's Diablo Immortal all over again. They just don't understand how people want to engage with their games.
Which is wild too, because like the PC version of Diablo Immortal works great, like as a Diablo game. And the mobile version's fine, but the way they sold it to people when they announced it was so fucking bad.
I mean, they're also microtransactioned all to hell.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, I played through a good chunk of Diablo Immortal. I don't think I beat it because I don't think you can. I think like eventually like you hit like a point where like you do hit a paywall at one point, like not legit, not literally, but like there's a point where like I think I got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not getting anything better right now, and I'm getting my ass whooped. I'm not spending money. Fuck you off. That, or I got to a point where I was like, I'm just not playing this anymore. I'm playing other things instead. But yeah, so there's that stuff going on, which is crazy too, because one of my complaints about Diablo 4 is something that Diablo Immortal kind of gets right, where it's about like your characters interacting with the world based on like who they are and their background. Because like the whole like I love necromancers. I've been a necromancer main since Diablo 2.
Mm-hmm.
Diablo 3 has some of the best like necromancer interacting. I think all classes interacting with like Leia and everyone else in Diablo 3 is fantastic. They make it such a great way of like your generic character isn't so generic. They are an actual person in this world. And you might name them, you might name your barbarian, like Big Muscle McGee or whatever, but they are a person in that world. And I like that aspect of it. And there are sometimes your character does that in Diablo 4, but I'm gonna probably end up going back and replaying it with a different class, probably Druid. But I have a very strong feeling that maybe some words are different and like the voice is different, but overall it's the same person. It's just
yeah. I don't remember anything in particular where my character was like responding because they are a sorcerer. Like it was just kind of generic. Okay, we need to go kill this thing. Let's go kill this thing.
Yeah, part of it also is very like that's so weird too because it's like Diablo 3 sorcerers are like if you pick sorcerer, you're the student of the wizard from Diablo 2. You're like there are ties into the like Zul is the necromancer from Diablo 2. He shows up as a fully named character in Diablo Immortal and has like an entire quest line around him and his fallen apprentice from the Priests of Rothma. And if you play a necromancer, you have comments about being part of the necromancer's order. And it's crazy that it's like this game is just totally absent of it, especially when like Rothma, who is the like origin point of necromancers, is there's pivotal moments with that character that show up and there's zero reaction if you're a necromancer. And it boggles my mind that there's no way that they don't like, because the entire point of necromancers is they use balance, which is the idea of life and death, hell and heaven, kind of in balance to kind of manipulate what's called essence, which is the like life force, basically. And like that's their whole shtick. And like it's like there's so many points where balance comes up being a very important thing, and necromancer's silent on it. And it's like that's so weird. It's such a missed opportunity for lore to be like make an impact and not just be text on a screen. And they miss that opportunity time and time again. So from a lore aspect, I'm very frustrated by Diablo 4. Gameplay wise, more Diablo.
Yeah. Yep. More Diablo.
Necromancer's Book of the Dead. I love the changes they made to Necromancer's Book of the Dead. I think they need to buff a lot of stuff because apparently I'm not the only one who thought after post 50, like you feel weaker compared to other classes.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah. I mean, like just post 50, everything just screeches to a halt.
It's true.
Like seemingly by design. It's like, this is not a good design. Like I don't appreciate that suddenly I'm having to spend an entire night just to get like one level up.
Also, it's like your paragon points. It's like, yeah, +5, +5, +5. It's like, okay, but like ability points feel so much more important and impactful because they align with abilities. And now you're just like stat boost, stat boost, stat boost. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
None of these are altering my ability in a visceral or impactful way that I can tell other than the numbers change.
They will eventually when you unlock like the second and beyond Paragon boards.
I'm good.
Like yeah, the first board you get is pretty generic and it has just a whole bunch of like stat boosts and stuff like that. And then the second one, it's like when you unlock it, it's basically like, okay, choose which Paragon board you want to like add to your layout kind of thing, and you can choose based on like the rare and like legendary slots that are on that board. And so like since I was playing as a pyromancer sorcerer, I picked like the board that had a whole bunch of like pyromancy boosts and stuff like that would suddenly, start giving me, extra like 5-10% damage for all my fire spells or something like that. But I mean, at this point, I don't know if I'm ever even going to unlock those enough of those Paragon points to get to them, because I just don't care, and it takes forever. Is way too slow. So
I will say shout out to my friends who are from like my old school World of Warcraft days, and like my friends from high school that I'm still friends with on BattleNet, where I know, shout out to you, especially Micah. You definitely don't have enough time listening to listen to this because you are a parent of 2 children and work full time, and you're level 80 something in Diablo. So But shout out to you, man. You messaged me at one point, like making me aware of necro builds being bad after 50, and like shout out to you about putting that in my mind, so I was aware of it. But also, shout out to you just like falling back into it. He doesn't play a lot of games anymore. A lot of that group of my friends don't play video games anymore because they made the decision to have children, which good for them. I love kids. Kids are great. But like I don't have them for a reason, for multiple reasons. But yeah, no, like massive shout out to all my old school friends who are like like almost level 100 if you're not level 100 by now. This game is still working clearly for a lot of people, which is great. Because I really hope that if they listen to anything, I hope they listen to the critiques of this, especially from the lore aspect, and they kind of take that going forward.
Yeah.
So,
any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, Diablo 4 is more Diablo. Diablo good.
There you go. So yeah, lastly, I want to talk a little bit about Elemental. This is the new Pixar movie. I went and saw it last Monday. Day our last episode went live. Went and saw it with my family as like a belated Father's Day thing. We enjoyed all the Pixar stuff growing up, so this was a nice little fun way for us to go spend a little post Father's Day and just enjoy a movie. And I really enjoyed Elemental. I think my biggest takeaway from it is that the marketing team at Disney seems to be just doing it a disservice in how they marketed this movie. Because the marketing for it is very much all like here's Ember, she's a fire elemental, and here's Wade, he's a water elemental, and they're going to be together, but clearly the elements don't mix. And so it's like a Romeo and Juliet kind of vibe that they're playing with. And in reality, the movie feels way more like a Zootopia kind of thing, in that like Element City is very clearly like an allegory for like the melting pot kind of idea, specifically like a New York City kind of thing. And Ember, who is your main like female protagonist and kind of the center of the movie, like the beginning of the movie is her parents being the first fire people to emigrate to Element City, and like they don't speak the language, so they get like homogenized names at the like equivalent of Ellis Island, and so there's like immediately like weird tonal stuff there. But then like the first few minutes of the movie is basically like they emigrate and like build a community of other fire people as like other fire people move. And so basically like they create their own community because Element City is not built with fire in mind. Like one of the most like glaring examples of that is like the subway transport, or not subway, like the railway transport system is like on a water like slide, not a slide, but like a river thing. And so when the train goes by, like water just sloshes over and just like creates like a waterfall effect as the train moves. So like fire people obviously can't walk when the train is going overhead, kind of thing. And just things like that are kind of like at play. And so there is very much, and the crux of Ember's story isn't necessarily, oh, she meets this water guy and starts to fall for him, and they have a how can they coexist kind of relationship. It's much more she feels the pressure as the daughter of these immigrants to live up to their story and take over and kind of be their dream. Like they dreamed of a new life and coming to the city and making a world for their daughter, and the daughter maybe realizing she doesn't want to take over the store, or she has like those kinds of concerns. And like the fact that like none of that vibe is really being
It's not at all
in the ads. It's like, oh, it's like, I get that it's like a heavy concept, in the same way that like I don't remember Zootopia really being like, hey, up front with the allegory on all the racism that is going on in Zootopia.
It was, hey, Rabbit is a cop chasing a criminal fox.
Yeah,
that's the point. And now they're an odd couple. Isn't that funny? And it's like also racism.
Yeah. So it's very much like that kind of thing of like, oh, I was very pleasantly surprised by the deeper immigrant story that is being told through that film, and I think it touches on a lot of like really um, emotional strings that I don't think animation explores a lot, and I think, but they could explore it through that medium, through the way they tell the story. So yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and the at the core, yes, there is a romance between the characters, and they are charming and have great chemistry together. Shout out to Leah Lewis as Ember and Mamoudou Ati as Wade. Lots of like, I mean, the movie is built around the two of them, and both characters come across charming in their different ways. And like I found myself, yeah, rooting for them, and you know, trying to like very much being like, how is this going to work between these two? Because like a lot of the movie is built up around like they can't you know kiss, or they can't touch or whatever, like what is going to happen there as they start to fall for each other, like how are they going to explore their you know their lives together kind of thing, and it ends up like doing it in very fun and interesting ways, and it feels like a fun Pixar movie. I had a lot of fun with it. I'm sad that it seems to be going the way of the you know the sawmill, like so many of the Pixar movies recently. Like it definitely feels like, and I feel like we're seeing this a lot with like even the Marvel stuff,
Yeah.
is the pandemic, Disney's decision to put especially Pixar stuff just on Disney Plus immediately, but just Disney Plus in and of itself existing very much feels like people are like, well, I don't need to go see it in theaters, so I'll just wait a couple months and it'll be on Disney Plus and I'll watch it then. I mean, like Encanto didn't do great box office.
Nope.
It blew up on once it was on Disney Plus, and it's the kind of thing. Much, I mean, like even now we saw with Spider-Verse, like Spider-Verse didn't do great numbers, the first movie, but it like the movie went to Netflix, and a ton of people found it on Netflix during the pandemic. So I feel like the reason Spider-Verse 2 is doing so much better is because A, it's not going to immediately be on Disney Plus, you know, in a month's time or something like that. And B, like there was just a drive to really sell it. I think Encanto 2, if there ever were one, because of how big it blew
Hmm.
up on Disney Plus, would probably get that same kind of boost. But clearly the Pixar movies are not. Like Buzz Lightyear was one of the biggest appointment Pixar films box office wise last year, and this is even doing even worse. And it's a shame because there's like a good story there, and I think there's a lot of heart to it. But I think Disney unintentionally devalued Pixar properties by releasing so many of them just straight to Disney Plus, even as the pandemic started like opening things back up again. It's just like, well, and even as they were selling, you know, other things, premium, you know, day and date kind of thing, and being like, okay, if you want to watch Black Widow, pay $30 to watch Black Widow. Like the fact that Pixar just went straight up on there and was just part of your subscription was like, okay, well, yeah, people don't feel like spending the money for it, so
Yeah.
it's disappointing. But I really did enjoy Elemental, so if you're so inclined, go check it out. It's also like this goes without saying, I feel like, but you know, the standard typical beautiful Pixar stuff. The fact that one of these characters is just a constantly flickering flame on the screen the entire time is, I'm sure, incredibly difficult to animate and design, but
No idea how you
it
do that. It
it
sounds awful.
it looks flawless, and looks great. And they have a lot of fun with how the elements interact with the world around them too. I will say that as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the characters. Really enjoyed the themes and the ideas and the heart of the story as well. So shout out to Elemental. But yeah, I think that's probably gonna do it. Did you have any questions or anything? Re
No.
Elemental? Yeah.
I understand now why my boss, she said she cried during it. It's like, yeah, it makes sense now.
Hmm.
Um I do think that it's excellent that and I think it's a massive disservice that they told this as like it's a Romeo and Juliet story and not a hey, this is about like like first generation America or first generation post immigrant, like the child of immigrants born in the country. Like, what does that mean? What is that aspect of it? What does that look like
Yeah.
prejudice wise?
There is even like a line of like, wow, I like you're a fire person. I understand you so well. And she's like, yeah, I've been speaking this language my entire life. Probably helps. And it's like, oh, that's a very clear coded line.
Yep, sounds like it. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, like they definitely like don't pull some of the punches that they easily could have. And yeah, it. I hope when it does come to Disney Plus, it gets more eyes on it and people start like people see what it has. Obviously, I will probably do a That D Plus show on it when the time comes.
I'm looking forward to it.
If for no other reason, then yeah, I want other people to see it, and so I can discuss it with them.
There you go. Yeah. As a point, I didn't go see it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So in theaters, so like I'm part of the problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you, Cam, for sitting down to talk about all the games we've been playing. Let me talk about Elemental a little bit there.
Happy to.
You can follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2Bs, 2Ts. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to Jedi Fallen Order coming to a close pretty soon in the next couple weeks. Episode 17 is going to be coming out this week, so stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out on Wednesday. Speaking of which, I'll definitely get that episode over to you tonight, Trevor. Looking at the clock right now, it's like probably won't be finished with it, but yep, we'll get started on that process tonight.
That's fine. You just gotta. I will just keep on you and be like, hey, I enjoy Final Fantasy 16, but also get me your damn episode.
Totally fair. Yeah, no, we're coming to a close on it. It's very exciting to have finished like what will be my second long-term series for that nerdy site. Nowhere near as long as Dying Light 2's Let's Plays.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it's a phenomenal experience. Last week's episode is where I really came to like full circle on the game, and from here on out, it's nothing but good times and good vibes. So go check that out.
There you go. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo that shout out as well as our Tears of the Kingdom series of Let's Plays that are continuing to go out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You need to get me Fallen Order. I need to edit and upload the rest of my episodes because the episodes that went up last week on the Gerudo Valley area of the game were the last ones that I had previously uploaded. Got everything else like recorded and done in the can. I just need to actually sit down and finish the end of the work for those ones. But yeah, so we got probably another couple weeks of Tears of the Kingdom. Then maybe we'll have to go back and revisit the Fire Giant. Who knows? But yeah, also go check out That D Plus show. We spent the last month doing all the Indiana Jones movies in the lead up to Dial of Destiny here this coming week, which I imagine that will be next week's episode of That Nerdy Site Show. We'll be back to spoiler cast territory with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I think I'm pretty sure Logan's also planning on seeing that, so it'll probably be the three of us for that one. Maybe Frank if we can get him too. I don't know. So yeah, stay tuned for all of that. Follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you all, as always, for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.